Space, the final frontier. These are the voyages of the National Aerospace Agency. Their mission? To explore the surface of the moon, to discover new things, and to prepare mankind for the eventuality of Mars, to boldly go where no one has gone before. I want to fund NASA. How do I want to fund NASA? I want to fund the Artemis Project. Well, what is the Artemis Project? Artemis is NASA's plan to return man to the moon by 2024, as stated on their website. They also intend to use this to survey the surface of the moon and to explore it in its entirety. Further, they want to use the Artemis program as a springboard towards an eventual program to put man on Mars. Okay, well that's what Artemis is. So, what's the plan? The plan is that the United States federal government will provide NASA with the funding that it needs for the Artemis program. That funding is $30 billion over 5 years. That funding, according to Jim Bridenstine, is about what it would take for NASA to be able to fund the program. Further, also according to Jim Bridenstine, it can't be from within NASA's current funding. It has to be new funding, because they have, quote-unquote, already tried that, and it simply doesn't work. So, it costs a fair bit of money. What do we get out of it? Well, Flight Director of NASA Gene Kearns specifically laid out 3 advantages that we would gain from the Artemis program. The first of these advantages is in STEM education. Believe it or not, America currently desperately needs STEM scholars. And the number of STEM scholars has been tied to projects which NASA has been running in the past. Whenever we were running the Apollo missions, whenever we were running the space shuttle missions, the number of people in STEM was extraordinarily high. However, ever since those missions have ended, we've seen this trickling down until we have desperately low numbers of people in STEM. A new project in NASA would be able to reinvigorate those numbers and to encourage people to look into STEM as a viable career opportunity, and as something that is simply impressive to them. The second advantage is in global leadership. This represents an opportunity for the United States that is simply unprecedented. We have the opportunity to create a safe environment, a secure environment for the burgeoning space-based economic system of Earth to grow under United States leadership if we take the lead. We're in the perfect position to take the lead. You could think of it like a marathon. We've got a massive lead on everyone, but currently, we're basically just standing still. And sure, if we do this for a while, we'll still be in the lead, but eventually, somebody is going to take over the lead. And when that happens, we're not going to be able to get it back, because it takes time to build that momentum. And we need to start moving while we still have a lead that we can rely on. The third advantage was in commercial relationships with businesses already investing in space. For instance, companies like SpaceX. The advantage that NASA would get from being able to have a relationship with these companies is basically that they'd be able to outsource certain programs, and in doing so, they would save money on the administrative costs of those programs by allowing them to be handled by companies which already have infrastructure that's well suited towards it. So NASA would be able to save money while they're going forward with the Artemis program and create a long-term situation where NASA can just continue to save money while they outsource things to private companies as they work on official works. So, those are the advantages. There's got to be a catch. Well, there are 3 particular challenges that NASA is facing going forward with the Artemis program. The first one is obvious. It's funding. $30 billion is reasonable for the United States government. But it's a big enough amount of money that we have to think about it. We have to consider whether or not it's worth it. I believe that it is worth it, and we need to fight to convince our lawmakers of the same. The second one is actually related directly to our lawmakers. Legislative feet dragging. Several lawmakers, one particularly a lawmaker from New York, stated that they believe that it would be better for the program to be moved back to 2028. Well, that seems reasonable, except that if we move it back to 2028, then what's to say we don't move it back to 2032 or even further back? We have to get the program off of its feet. Otherwise, we're never going to. So, we shouldn't be asking ourselves if we should just delay it. We need to do it if it's a good idea. And I believe it is an incredibly good idea for the United States. What's the third challenge, though? Well, the third challenge is something that we don't really have a solution for yet. And that third challenge is the internal leadership of NASA. NASA needs massive reforms inside of its own structure in order to be able to efficiently lead this mission. However, they can't lead this mission unless they actually have a mission. So we, as people, need to fight for NASA in order to be able to have the Artemis program. Well, in conclusion, I want to fund the Artemis program. It's going to cost $30 billion over 5 years. It's going to bring a number of advantages to United States people, as well as people all across the globe, and it does have a few challenges. But they're problems that we can overcome as long as we help NASA, which gets into what we can do, because NASA needs our help. So, what can we do? Well, there are two things. The first one's really easy. You've already done it. Just listen. Because you've listened, you know. You're going to change your behavior based on that, even if it's not active. Second, contact your federal representative, because at the end of the day, NASA needs our help. We need to communicate to our leaders what we want. And what we want is the Artemis program.